All right, so we can talk about the phases of matter. Another thing we can talk about is the classifications of matter. So what are the different types of matter? And so we'll start off at the top of just matter. And remember, we define matter just kind of like stuff, all the stuff in the universe. And so the first thing you can ask in this classification is it uniform? That is, does it look the same everywhere? And so if you answer yes to this question, it looks the same everywhere, then you have what's known as a pure substance. And so a pure substance is kind of made out of one thing. And we'll go over thing here shortly. And then if you answer no to this question, it's not uniform everywhere, then it is a mixture. And so mixtures are made out of more than one thing. But then we can further divide our pure substances and our mixtures. So let's take a look at our pure substances first. And then the question we can ask is, can it be reduced to simpler atoms? And if you answer yes to this question, that it can be reduced into simpler atoms, then what you have here is a compound or a molecule. And so a compound or a molecule is more than one element combined through chemical bonds. And so example of this would be water. So water is H2O, so we can see it's made out of multiple elements, but it's still only one thing because it's a compound, because these hydrogens and oxygens are bound together through chemical bonds. And so if we go back up here, if you say no to this question, that you cannot be reduced into simpler atoms, then what you have here is an element. And so in an element, you only have one type of atom. And so in this case, an example of this would be a gold bar. A gold bar is made out of atoms of gold, Au, and only gold. And so there's your pure substances. They can either be compounds or molecules or elements. And then if we go back up here, back to our original question, is it uniform? We say no, then we can have a mixture, right, of more than one thing. And so it's kind of a little bit confusing because we can ask another question, and that question is uniform throughout? And so when we ask this original question, is it uniform? We kind of were talking about the macro world, whereas now when we're asking about uniform, we're talking about the intermolecular world. So if we zoomed in on this, would it look the same throughout? And so if you answer yes, then what you have is a homogeneous mixture. Right, and a homogeneous mixture is uniform throughout. An example of this would be like Gatorade. So Gatorade looks the same throughout, right? It looks, if you have blue Gatorade, it looks blue throughout, even though it's made out of different things, right? Gatorade is made out of water, some sugar, and some salt. So you can see it's made out of more than one thing, but yet it looks the same throughout. And then if it doesn't look the same throughout, then we have the heterogeneous mixture. And so a heterogeneous mixture is something like a chocolate chip cookie. Right, in a chocolate chip cookie, you have parts where you have chocolate and parts that you don't, and you can see that through the eye. Oh, whoops, I messed this up. This should be, flip these two. This should be intermolecular. And this should be kind of macro. there we go. Whoops. And so you can look at different charts of this kinds of stuff. So here's another one. If you just Google classifications of matter, you can find all kinds of different charts just like this, but they all go through the same thing, right? You start off with matter on the top. You ask some kind of question, in this case, variable composition, and then you either come with a pure substance or a mixture. And then these pure substances can be further subdivided into elements or compounds, while mixtures can be subdivided into heterogeneous mixtures or homogeneous mixtures. So let's take a look at an example of each one of these. So an element like helium, helium is something you would find on the periodic table, and a helium balloon, a blimp, is filled with helium and only helium. So it's just a pure element by itself. Next up, we have a compound. So this is something like pure water, right? It's made out of just molecules of water, but these molecules of water are made out of different elements. Next up, we have this heterogeneous mixture. And so a heterogeneous mixture, you can see the difference with your eye, right? So in this case, they do wet sand. And so you have part that's solid down on the bottom, and then you have water on top. So it's a mixture of multiple things, and you can see a clear delineation between the sand and the water. And then finally, we have this homogeneous mixture. So in this case, they use tea with sugar. So when you look at this in the macroscopic world, it looks totally the same. So it's homogeneous. But if you think about what's actually in here, it's different, right? There's molecules of water and then molecules of sugar. So it is a mixture of things. So you want to be able to identify what something is, whether it's an element, compound, or hetero or homogeneous mixture.